Mr. Anka.
Paul.
Paul. I'll call you Paul. I can get used to that. Thanks for having us. I mean,
Thank you.
you know, you've written over 900 songs in your time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are represented on this beautiful wall behind us.
Yeah.
In researching for this and getting ready for this conversation, I watched your documentary, which we'll get to shortly, but it got me thinking your music has been the backdrop for so many people's memories, right? Whether it be weddings or birthdays, bar mitzvahs, presidential inaugurations, proms, whatever it may be. All of your music can be attached to a memory for somebody, wherever they are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Can you fathom that?
Well, I have thought about it. This has been a 70-year journey. I've only been kind of verbalizing that recently because of the doc. And one of the reasons that I did it, is all my time is behind me and less in front. But when I looked at my music and realized that the decision I made as a young teenager, where I was the writer first, I wanted to be a journalist. I worked in a local newspaper, and only till I got thrown out of a shorthand class did I get into music. They put me in a music class. Thus, I began writing songs. But I realized that even after I got lucky with Diana, this young girl that was a couple of years older than I was, who I'd see in church, but in the 50s, if you weren't the same age or you weren't the same height, all that stuff came to the forefront. I realized that the writing aspect of my life was going to be important. Now, when I got lucky with Diana, I still said to myself, I've got to stay the writer. That's where the gravitas is. Because I had this squeaky little voice, and I was just writing from my teenage passion. But I said, it's going to end one day, but I got to be the writer first. So apropos to what you said, I started, with Buddy Holly. I wrote his first song. I went on from there to continue to write and to share my songs, not keep them for myself. Because when my voice started changing, I didn't know whether I'd still be in the business. So you get along that journey, an unsophisticated journey, because a lot of the guys that I knew, that I grew up with when pop music was in its infancy stage, we weren't sophisticated people. We came from modest backgrounds. There was no money. We were just a bunch of teenagers having a good time. You realize that you had to deal with that success and that journey that you were plowing on. When would you get wise enough to deal with it? But the writing thing, as it evolved, I started to realize the importance of being the writer in a business where a lot of them weren't the writers.
Yeah.
Many of them that preceded me were the necessity of having people write for them. So that was always my mantra in a sense. Keep the writer separate. By the time I got to My Way and the record company were pissed at me for not keeping it, I said, I'm too young. I'm 24. That's the guy. That's my friend. So the writing part, as I saw how, there's a black hole between when you sit in a room and you're by yourself and you write, and there's this big, huge, vast black hole between you and that audience, because you don't know how you're affecting them. Yeah. You have no sense of anything till you go out and tour, till you're among them. And as I did that, and internationally, I became this international creature, all over the world I started realizing what those songs, as simple as they were, meant to people, to the point where I just finished in Mexico City a few days ago, 10,000 people in a stadium singing, Puppy Love, Lonely Boy. I'm 84 years old already. And then with TikTok, with the success of TikTok, I've got a bunch of teenagers running around screaming like, I'm going, this is madness. So apropos to what you said, I've realized through the years, being the writer, how you affect people's lives, the tears, the letters, guys on death row. I could go through all kinds of dynamics of how the song, especially My Way, has affected people. So it's gratifying. Yeah. It's the payback. It's the feedback, and you just have to. I look at it in a universal sense. If you said to me, the motivation for My Way, I knew Sinatra, knew the way he spoke, was dying to write for him. He was going to retire. There's a whole story there. But something came from the universe where even today now, there's something going on in the universe that's going to unveil itself soon. So all of us creative people, I think we've been blessed with something. Something has come that's given us this gift, and we've used it. And I'm very pro the writer in today's world because AI has and will change everything dramatically. But without the writer, and it's not my pat on my back, it's universal to all writers, without the word on the note, without those songs, there are no artists, there's no record companies, there's no lawyers, there's no agencies, there's no managers. The song is the thing. Shakespeare, the play is the thing. So I get a big kick out of what my songs do for people and the feedback, because I write, lyrical, indigenous kind of songs to love, country, stuff like that.
You touched on a few things that I want to get into. You mentioned Mexico, just got back from Mexico, 10,000 people in the arena. Yeah. You see a little bit of that kind of stuff in the doc, right? You're touring the world, you're in Japan, and it's like, you look at the faces in the crowd, and they might be, in their 60s, 70s now, but in their faces, you can see that teenager that listened to those songs for the first time. You can see that. It's really magical, man. It's really cool that you're able to do that for people.
Yeah, listen. I'm able to do it. There's so many great writers. There's so many great artists. It's the same thing. I go from Billy Joel to Sting to Elton. We all as writers, we're so gratified that we're moving people. And they look at the same faces in their fans. I see it in my fans. I guess the difference with me is, I've been doing this for 70 years. I started as a teenager when they were teenagers. Now, granted, other artists, you can talk about, Taylor Swift. She's got all those young little girls that in 50 years will either turn out, if she wants to work. Music is magic. The power of music, where it used to be somewhat of a political tool, it no longer prevails. It doesn't have that kind of power anymore. But I see those faces everywhere I go. I'm going back to Asia, I'm going back to Europe, and it's always the same. Those people still show up, and those songs mean so much to them. And it's kind of a giggle to me because when I look back at it, and even with the doc, as cathartic as it was, they were just simple, little, honest songs from a guy that, got lonely, that didn't have a girlfriend, that put your head on my shoulder because I was all by myself looking at kids at dances. It was just what I felt, puppy love. It was, it was Annette Funicello who was a wonderful person, a great little artist, who Disney protected, and here I was grabbing her and kissing her and squeezing her. Back in the 50s, are you kidding? It's a puppy love. They were tearing me away from her. She wanted to get married. It was this whole saga. And I wrote Puppy Love. It was the simplicity of that, that I respect, even though they're just very young teenage songs that everybody else equated to.
Did you know that when you were writing those songs, or did you kind of have a feeling that, was it you were just writing something personal that was going on in the moment, or did you know at some point that you were writing something with a universal message that everybody could relate to?
Good question. None of us really know what's going to be a hit. None of us know what's going to be universal. As a sense, as a professional, and as you hone your craft, you get a sense something is happening in there. As a kid, it was just, I wasn't great in school because I didn't want to be, but I knew I just wanted to write. I had an expression. But did I know there would be a hit? I had a sense that they had to be a hit if I was going to continue. But as I sung them and recorded them, in a process that's not like today. When I relate to a lot of young artists that I work with, and I try to explain to them, I was in a room with musicians with a little piece of tape and a machine, and we sat there and we rehearsed till we got it right, and we did 10 to 15 takes. If there was a mistake, we'd take a razor blade and cut the tape and put a piece of Scotch tape till we got it right. Today you got auto-tune, you got boards the size of this. I don't know who sings or who doesn't. So back then, I just sang. If it was going to be a hit, it was going to be a hit. If it wasn't, now, as I got on a roll and had a few hits and started feeling and puffing up as this kid, I'd say, oh, this is going to be a bigger one. Lonely Boy, no, I don't like to get... You were still guessing, but you had a professional sense that it was in what we call the grooves. And if you hit the grooves, you had a chance of saying, optimistically, this is going to be a hit, this will affect people. But to be definitively sure, no. Nobody. We'd record songs that you'd think were going to be a hit. Even today, a lot of artists I know, they put stuff out, tank. Yeah. You don't know all the time. You do sometimes, but not all the time. I had no idea back then. We just kept, I had to deliver 3 albums a year. I mean, today you're lucky if you do one every 2 years. But we had no idea. We just put out the best effort. Pop music was in its infancy stage. And what people have to realize is that there was a few radio stations. There was only 3 or 4 record companies. In 4 days, you knew if you had a hit or not. You were on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was that condensed where you had a sense of we'll make it or we wouldn't make it. That was the process. Today, it's so eclectic. I couldn't name the top 3. It's impossible. There's so much stuff out there, and it's all streaming. It's no longer record company driven. But it's a different process today, and that's what we all have to really be concerned about, as to where it's evolving, how it's evolving, to what is music going to mean, how's it going to be produced. The number 1 country record in the country today is all driven by AI. That's it. There's not one individual involved. It's all AI driven.
Scary.
It's very scary, but I believe in evolution. I believe in, we're at a juncture today, I think, culturally and in the world, which is a major turning point because it's happening so quickly. Mm-hmm. So the scary part is a lot of people are going to be replaced. A lot of things are going to be replaced. Too bad, but when you look at the history of this country, we've always been able, historically, to balance things out. So it's going to get to robots everywhere, people working maybe 2 days a week. They'll be given money. The government's going to have to support that. But the scary part is a lot of stuff is going to drastically change. Now, even with writers today in the music business, we don't know what our royalty stream will be or how it will be or, what will be taken away from us. So it's a big concern on all the creative levels and for the average guy that's working in a factory or for whatever, that he's going to be replaced. So balances will have to prevail. And the people, hopefully, I'm not a big political person because I love my country, but I've not always trusted those that run it. And the nature of those people has not always been for the people. And that's going to be the big concern creatively also. Creatively. I mean, I could go in today and create any record I want without using any musicians.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
I could just punch in, give me a Motown drum. I want the bass sound that Sting has. And McCartney played that guitar lick, and I'll punch it in A&I, and it will deliver me the track without a musician.
In like 2 minutes as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
How quick do you want it?
Yeah, and then, it can evolve to making music videos with that or this or this. Or,
exactly.
Yeah. It's scary, man.
Yeah.
You mentioned, obviously, when you started, pop was very early.
Yeah.
Were you aware, you and the people you were doing it with, kind of that you were shifting culture in a way at the time? Or was that a discovery that you had later, like, oh, wow, we really were the trailblazers that started this really early pop movement?
We knew there was a shift, as young as we were and as we were banded together. And I realized, because I was into it, the black culture and the black music scene, when you study the history of this country, it's always driven every decade, as far back as jazz, and brilliantly done. And the black experience, that's what I was listening to. Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, all the groups. When we came along, we whiteified it. We were a clergyman's answer to music. It sounds weird to say, but we were this band of little kids who were just singing from our hearts and changing a culture that we knew had to be changed. Now, we hadn't seen the Beatles yet. We hadn't felt really rock. So it was just us. It was just us. And when I went to England, I realized how important the American music scene was to the English, because they were listening to Chuck Berry, Fats Domino. Their big star was a guy named Tommy Steele, who was Elvis Presley. But they had no idea where they were going to go till they started copying us and doing it better. And I was in England. You know, I spent a lot of time because I was very successful over there, and I loved going over there. And you know, my wife ultimately, she's from there, may she rest. So I was very much into that whole culture and loved it. But I realized how we were influencing the world from Japan to England. And when I was there, you know, Clapton was emerging and they were starting to get their chops. And then I heard, oh, there's this guy came into town. You know, his name is Eric Clapton, and I'm sorry, Jimi Hendrix. They all went to see him, and I think everybody went home and wanted to commit suicide. They couldn't believe what they were hearing.
Wow.
He changed the whole thing. Prior to that, when I was in Paris, and I worked there at the Olympia from age 17, 18 on, I went and saw these guys, 4 guys from England. They were supporting a friend of mine who was headlining. They were called the Beatles. And then I started performing. They came to see me, and I met these 4 guys with the hair. I got pictures, you know, I look at them every now and then, and they were saying, oh, you know, we want to write and do like you're doing. And I said, well, you got to do that. You got to be the writer. I go to England. I sit with them. They wind up with this guy, Epstein. I go home to my agents, Normie Weiss and Sid Bernstein. I said, there's these guys called Beatles, and they're looking at me like I'm nuts because they knew Perry Como, they knew Frank Sinatra. What do you mean Beatles? I'm saying, no, and I brought records back, records that you couldn't even get distributed in the United States in a not a media-driven society. Nobody knew who the hell they were. They were just popping over there. I said, you gotta, this is it. It's like a revolution. But they went and signed them, predicated on what I told them, and you know the rest of the story. Yeah. They came over in '64. That's when pop music, as I knew it, elevated into a new level. They opened the floodgates so that pop music had a respectable kind of sense to it for everybody. Madison Avenue, people embraced it. They opened the door, the Beatles. That was the next change from us.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that you were a part of that whole journey of making that happen.
Crazy. It's, you know, listen, I could go back to that dressing room and sitting with those guys, you know, knowing they were so different, but they were so emphatic. We want to write, and you know, I said, you got to write, you got to publish, and you got to produce, because they weren't. They were a cover band.
Oh yeah.
And when I saw them in Paris, they were a cover band. But what a great story! What a great success for them. Very happy for them. Yeah.
You know, cut to you, early 20s. You're in Vegas. You're playing with your idols. You know, you're playing with Sammy Davis. You're playing with Sinatra. By that point at 21, did you feel like, yeah, I belong in this room, or was there still a little imposter syndrome going on? What was your energy at that time? Because you were a veteran by that point.
You know, as we evolved in the 50s, the concern was, and we knew, we may not last. That's why I leaned on the writer's side. But myself and Bobby Darin, Frank Avalon, you know, the tendency in social sense is people love to emulate. You know, they put things in boxes, the next Ali, the next... We looked at these guys that were the core and the force of what was going on. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Las Vegas. You have to realize Vegas was the Mecca. You worked for the mafia. You worked for them in New York, in Miami, and Las Vegas. But here are these cool guys that dressed with tuxedos and went on stage smoking and drinking and women. Hey, when you're 18, you go, I want some of that. Yeah. And we looked at it as a dynamic of longevity. Like, if we can't be and do what they're doing, knowing that that was the only forum that existed at that time, then we're going to fail. So I started getting an act together, taking lessons and dancing and singing, because I wanted to be like them, just like Bobby Darin, because we thought that was going to be the salvation, in a sense, for us to last. It wasn't rock and roll shows that we were doing, 2 songs each and screaming girls. You know, we wanted to grow into those guys. So in answer to your question, they were never rivals. These guys were huge. I wish they were a rival. I could have competed. I'm this young kid with the kind of songs that Sinatra hated. He didn't like me, he didn't like Presley. He'd never say that to me because I'd come in and I did business for these guys. But I was this kid among these older guys having the incredible blessing of being around and learning in an industry where it was the only place you could learn with guys that were my idols. Yeah. What I learned watching them and never being the smartest guy in the room, they were never a rival, ever. I was this guy with, mobsters around and showgirls and people coming in and playing Vegas. Now, within the realm of that, I was still going to Japan, I was still going to England, but dying to get home to be with these guys in Las Vegas and then finishing a show at 1 o'clock and winding up in a steam room with Sammy Davis and Frank Sinatra nude. I mean, God, it was like, I couldn't believe it. And then the girls came in, you're right? Yeah. I mean, I'm being very openly honest, but from a teenage standpoint, I'm just hitting 21, huge. Yeah. It was huge for me. So I learned from those guys of things, what to do, what not to do. I mean, it was something that I always cherish because Vegas, people look at it today, it's corporate, it's wall-to-wall Disney and buildings. It's 5 buildings in the middle of a desert. The airport was no bigger than the room that we're in. I'll never forget it. It was a wood shack, TWA. There's a box you put your luggage, and it was all desert. You could have bought real estate for $50 an acre. We all went, who wants to live in the desert? Wow. So there you were with this real highlight of show business with the guys that were the guys with an environment like you couldn't see anywhere. People came in and well-dressed, eclectic, stars, people from all around the country. It was the only place of its kind ever. Yeah. And probably still is, other than Asia where they have, the duplication. So, not rivals. I was totally gassed that I was among these people, that they would talk to me, that they would teach me. Okay, great. The guys they worked for, they knew them well, and I was making money, and they were going to mentor me. Yeah. I was making money for them. I'd perfected myself, in a sense, to entertaining. But just to be around them was more of a blessing to me that I'm with my, I'm like them. I want to be like them. Yeah. And ultimately, I found my niche.
I can imagine you just being a sponge to all of the information and all of the, I can't think of a better place to learn with better guys.
Yeah.
The story of My Way obviously is incredibly well documented, so we don't really need to get into it. But you wrote the lyrics in 5 hours, heard the melody while in France, got the rights to it.
Correct.
Then Sinatra said he's leaving the biz. You put pen to paper. How did you, in your mid-20s, know what a man at the age of 53 years old, who was on the brink of retirement, thinking he was going to retire.
He did.
How did you know what he was thinking?
I knew the guy.
Yeah.
Obviously. The moment that spawned all of this was when I was working in Miami, Fontainebleau Hotel. He was in town doing a movie, Lady in Cement. And for the guys that we worked for, it could have been a documentary. And we went to dinner. Very simple, like we'd always done. And he stated that he's tired, fragile, fed up, and was quitting. He was going to retire. Well, I was moved by that, as many were. Frank Sinatra, if you can really get inside what he represented, to hear that he was quitting, major. And I'd always been in a teasing fashion of, I want to write for you, and him saying, I want you to write for me, but I never had the guts. The closest I came was, well, you can do Puppy Love. I'll change it to Love is a Bitch. Right? I told you that, right? So that moment at that dinner, I said, this is it. He's going. Now, he was going to do one more album with my guy that found me, responsible for who I was musically back then, Don Costa. Brilliant. One of those guys in the background that never gets the cheering and the rah-rah. And there's many of those guys, unsung heroes. He was my producer, my arranger. I introduced him to Sinatra and did one of his best albums, Sinatra and Strings. Anyway, he was going to do one more album. I go home to New York. one more album. This is it. He's going. I got to write for him. I had this melody from France. I wasn't buying the Pyramids. It was like it took 30 minutes, quick 2 pages, nothing. But I took it away from what it was. You know, mine's not a translation. Mine is brand new. It was very French. You know, it was as beautiful as they could be graphically. Of a marriage breaking up. You know, I love your eyelash and the smell of your armpit, and we're gonna have coffee, but whatever. I threw all that out. It was called Comme d'habitude, as usual. And I sat at my typewriter because, you know, from my journalistic days, and I typed everything. And I sat at it was like 12 midnight, raging storm outside. I'll never forget, pounding on the windows. And I started writing metaphorically, what would Sinatra say if he were writing this? And I transcribed it from the record to the piano. And I started typing, and now the end is near, metaphorically. And I started using stuff like ate it up, spit it out, things that I would normally not even write about. And it started to write itself. And it was at that moment that I really embraced the fact that there's something universally happening for everyone in the world. Whatever you're blessed, whatever you're given spiritually, there's something that, as I said earlier, even today, that I'm believing in. It started to write itself 5 hours later. I finished it. And it's the one instance that I really felt confident that I had something. It was so different at a time in my life at 24 where I just said, where did that come from? I called him in Las Vegas, sir, I've got blah, blah, blah. He said, come on, blah, blah. I go out, I sing it to him, but he was always Sinatra, you know, cool. It was never, oh, hey, who got a hit? So he said, I'm going to do it. 2 months later, I get a phone call from a studio in Los Angeles. I'm in New York. And he took a phone and he put it next to a speaker. He said, kid, listen to this. And I heard My Way for the first time. I started crying. It was such a hit. He stayed 10 more years.
Yeah.
He didn't retire.
Yeah. I mean, man, that just, you know, goes to show the power of a good song.
Yeah.
The power of good lyrics.
Yeah.
And the longevity. You know, let's talk about this documentary. It's quite vulnerable, isn't it? To kind of lay it all out like that and allow people to see it in this format. Did you feel like that?
You know, doing a documentary first, certainly cathartic. You're certainly aware of the fact that how much do you want to reveal? The only parameter that I put on it, in ultimately finding a team after turning a lot of people down to do the documentary, was I didn't want a lot of talking heads on there. A bunch of famous people raving about me. I said, I've always kind of resented that, even though I know it fits in a lot of the docs, because if you don't know who you are, and if people out there don't know who you are and base you on your talent, it's an obvious. Nobody's going to come in and knock you. You know. So I said, I don't want that. I don't want any credits on the film, but I'm going to be vulnerable, obviously, to an extent, equatable to what you would do when you write a book. Even though I wrote my book, My Way, which did well, I didn't expose everything. Okay, so there were moments in there, especially when I finally saw the final cut and sat down and watched it. It was not an experience. It was like having a root canal for me. I just don't like looking at myself, you know. So the moments that are on there, it's okay. I can live with them, you know. There's nothing on there that I look back and say, I wish I hadn't have said that. But I still wanted it to be honest enough to let people get to know where I was artistically, and just where I was in my normal life, if you will, you know.
Yeah.
But you're cautious when you're making it. You're cautious when you're making it, and for obvious reasons, because it's set in stone now. But there's nothing in there that I really feel I went too far with, or that I feel uncomfortable about. Not at all. Even though, as I said, there were moments where I said, you better be careful what you say here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you said, you could have had all the talking heads in the world.
Yeah.
The people that would have showed up for this documentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you didn't, which I think is nice because it's a story from you.
Yeah.
You said the film starts, present day, you're doing, the New Year's celebration, and it ends at that New Year's celebration.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful journey that it takes you
Yeah.
on.
And the song content, that's the part. I'm a songwriter. I'm a creative person, and I wanted the emphasis on that, and a little of the other. There's so much of that stuff out there anyway. It's just your personal journey, and you're gonna find out who cares and who doesn't, and it doesn't matter. It's there,
Yeah. Well, I mean, with a journey as storied as yours has been, it's been written by so many different people, and people have kind of an idea or think they have an idea of what your story has been. So it's nice that you're actually able to share it in this way, in this format.
Yeah.
And I was blown away
Yeah.
that you had all of this footage, all of this amazing behind the scenes
crazy.
stuff. It seems like you've archived everything well. You're pulling out old photos, and this is like those shots of you getting ready backstage. I don't know where you were, probably somewhere in Europe. You're backstage, you're getting your suit on. It's like, who would have thought that when you were shooting? Yeah, you did.
We kept everything. We have it all archived. We've got, my dad started me off on that. I lost my mom at 18, so I was very close with him. He was in my business. He just kept telling me, save everything, save everything. So we've got, everything archived, and they did a lot of work, before we started shooting in going through that. But I mean, when I looked at it, I kind of went, with everything else I've looked at with documentaries, some people start in the 80s, the 90s, and I kept going, wow, there's stuff in there I didn't even know I had, that it goes back 70 years, and to capture that and to look at, what pop music was like, all that earlier stuff was pretty wild for me, reflecting back on that, and that they found it, because I don't go through all these cans of stuff. They're all labeled and sitting there, and I can't tell you I know everything. But it was cool, because you're different. I wanted to be part of that movement that started everything in the beginning. That was very cool for me, yeah.
You were. I thought interesting quote that you had in the documentary was that you wanted to keep evolving every decade. We kind of touched on it before, how quickly the music industry has kind of moved. Did you find it easy or hard, going from generation to generation or decade to decade with those evolutions? Oh, then pop radio becomes this, and then this becomes this, and then music videos come in, and then this. Was it complicated at a time?
It was challenging. It was concerning, because you were privy to the fact that it was a business, not unlike film business. Artists come and go. Stuff happens. Stuff happens predicated on how you've existed. Were you a big druggie? Did you get in trouble? Was there controversy? How do you have to behave yourself to get over that hurdle? Who's out to destroy? So each decade, in the desire to want to be in it, I wanted to change. That's why I kept the songs. That's why I kept writing for others. That's why I kept performing. That's why I moved to Italy. That's why I sung in German. That's why I went to France. I sung in all these languages to say, how do I keep growing? Because I had the desire to do that, knowing that it was very challenging, because it was not only from within you, but the music was changing around me.
Big time.
Huge. And I'm going, I can't do that. Maybe if I worked hard, I could do that, but I don't want to do it. So navigating, how much do I stay rooted to Vegas? How do I keep the international thing going? What am I going to record now? I need a hit in the 70s, because you got She's a Lady, and you got My Way under. Okay, Having My Baby. My wife was. So you keep moving forward with a great belief in yourself. Yeah. And I've told people, somewhere in there was a revenge factor, because where I got turned down, or where I got disrespected, or people didn't believe, I learned, and I think if a lot of artists are honest, revenge is important. Revenge took me somewhere where I said, that was the motivating factor. I'll show you. It's one thing to believe in yourself and have a talent or whatever. It doesn't assure anything, but when you're rejected, revenge is an interesting dynamic. And I would bet that if you sat down with a lot of actors, singers, whoever, that if they're honest, they'll go, you're damn right.
Yeah.
That motivated me. So in keeping with what you're saying and trying to keep it going every decade, you just have to keep your nose on the grindstone and start looking at what your options are and just believe and work hard. You can't substitute hard work. You can't. So I got lucky with it. You know, here I am.
Yeah, you mentioned luck. You also, in the documentary, you kind of get to see a little bit of the business savvy,
Yeah.
right, that you had. How much of it do you put down to good business that you did?
Wow, good question. You know, earlier we were taken advantage of. People stole from me, and you know, you're a kid. You know music. You're happy and you're singing, but do I know? You know, they take it. They still do. You know the stories. They always have, and they always will. And I just realized, you know, I had a guy in my life named Irv Feld, who was a great business manager, who, you know, I lived with him and his family because I was a kid, and I learned a lot from him. But I learned that you got to take care of your own business. You have to respect the fact that you have a family, you work hard. Money never mattered to me, you know. I'm a spender. I never wanted to be the richest guy in the graveyard. I don't care. Because all of this is rented anyway. It's not yours. It's going to go. So, but taking care of your business and surrounding yourself with good people, because ultimately success has many fathers, and, you know, good is the enemy of great. But you've got to apply yourself to know your business, because if you let somebody else do it, you're going to get screwed in the end. Yeah. It's just the nature of the human factor. So it was important because I knew what I wanted. You know, I knew what my standards were. And even as a kid, you're manipulated anyway. We're all manipulated in life anyway through the big system. But when you're an artist and you're young, you're manipulated. You know, how to dress, what you're going to say. And I broke out of that somewhere in the 60s and said, I've just got to take care of my own life, for better or for worse. You know, I've got to really learn about it, like anybody would naturally do. Yes. Like anybody does anyway. Now, the artistic endeavor for all of us is your time is consumed. You're in studios, you're on the road, you're rehearsing. So you don't have that abundance of time every day to apply yourself in a financial way, you know, and that's unfortunate. But you have to find a way to do it.
Fascinating. And I enjoyed seeing that side of it in the documentary. And of course, you've got a new album coming soon. It doesn't stop. Inspirations of Life and Love.
Yeah.
Some classics, some new tracks, out February 13th. Are you still learning things about your vocal ability, or do you feel like you just know your voice through and through?
Well, you're cognizant of your capabilities. I've learned all the rudimental things. You realize that the years I've taken care of myself, a lifestyle that I live, is allowing me to function that way today. Now, if I were, you know, just deviating from being civilized and professional, I'd suffer like a lot of people today. I don't. You know, I still drink my olive oil in the morning. I have I eat some, and I know what to do with my voice today. I didn't earlier in my career. I had to go get coaching lessons because I had a kid's voice. But today, you know, I do things that may seem silly to people that I've done for many, many years. I mean, I inhale a lot of steam. I'll sit in a steam room. If I don't have one when I'm traveling, I'll put an umbrella with a sheet on it and put steam kettles to get that, to clean my body and to get moisture on my vocal cords, so that when I go to work, that they're what they're supposed to be. Yeah. I don't do certain things. I do certain things because I know that at this age, that if I'm not in top form, it's not going to be what I want it to be, thus I'm not going to work. So the answer to you is, I've got all of this stuff available to me to function, and if I deviate from that regime, I'm going to be in trouble. I think that it's predicated on health. There's a lot of people that unfortunately, without naming names, shouldn't be on the stage anymore. It's embarrassing. And I think they have to embrace their dignity because they can't sing anymore.
Right.
And I don't know why they're doing it. It hurts me. I look at it and go, you're so great and you've done such great things. Why are you making me feel uncomfortable? Well, I don't want to be that, and the I don't want to be that is using the little tricks that I use on how many days I work, on what I put in my body, a few other things that I won't talk about that allow me to function with the kind of voice that allows me to, articulate a wide variety of material. I don't lip sync. I don't go on and, throw that at a consumer where I'm lip syncing a whole show. I just don't believe in it. Now, if it works for somebody else, God bless you. I don't want it, and, I used to look in increments of 5 years ago, my career. I don't know that I look at 5 years anymore. I look at 2 years, And when you keep doing it, if you stand still in life, they throw dirt on you. And I've realized that. I've seen guys that retire, they sit back and they've got money and then they read a bunch of books and they watch a bunch of TV movies and they sit there and they take up gardening, which, I love. I go hose by. But no, if you've got something that you're really good at and that you've matured into, why in my business would you give that up?
I agree.
Other people don't,
Yeah. Well, I also think, yes, obviously the health benefits and you're looking great, but it's also a respect, I think, to the audience, right? The people
Totally.
that are paying to come and see you.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to respect that the money you earn is wacky and you may not deserve it or you do, but it's totally out of context with that guy that works 5 days a week and saves up and spends $500 by the time he's finished seeing you in restaurants and everything else. You need to respect that. And I've done that all my life. That's why I think my fan base, as you say, I've respected them in the choice of songs I do. I've respected the fact that I got to leave it on the stage for them. I will not throw a show. I just won't do it. I can't. It's not in my wiring to do that. I see it every day with a lot of artists. And people aren't stupid. The consumer is so sensitive today. They are so sophisticated as to what's going on. And they'll pay. They'll pay stupid money to see somebody. We know that. But man, you'd better give them something because that money means a lot to them. More to them than it means to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you kind of think of music, kind of double in a question here, do you see music in everything? And do you kind of think of these songs as kind of like a living, breathing thing?
If you think of life and all of us in a universal fashion as to what all this is, how and why, because I do, and I think there's more revelation coming. Yeah, absolutely. I think not only in that, but in a lot of things in life that are being said and being done. Absolutely. I think there's a connection to everything that we're all doing in this universe, Earth, all of it, that's all connected. We haven't really examined it because we've been so brainwashed and manipulated in life as to what our structure should be and what we should believe. I really believe that. And that's a whole other story for me. But I think it's all coming out now that it is all connected. Now, there's nothing stronger than the emotion of love. And there's nothing stronger than the power of music. Because it sets off whatever it is up here. And they've done experiments and scientifically looked at it, medically, scientifically, that just sets your body into a whole other state. What a powerful thing that is. Mm-hmm. That this mechanism that's made up so complex that when you hear music, or if you hear a lyric, what it sets you off, powerful stuff. So there's a statement made in that, along with, as I said, many things in life, many things visually. If you look at a motion picture and put it on pause, whether it's ridiculous, car chases, jumping, it's a weird looking image, isn't it? But when you turn the sound on and put the music in, wow. Wow. You look at a guy like Ennio Morricone, one of those unsung heroes who scored films. In some cases, he's known the film better than the director. And a lot of music guys, the Hans Zimmer, a ton of them, they'll know the film better than the director and bring it to life.
Yeah.
The power of music, that you're looking at something, but you're really looking through your ears and how it's manifesting in your brain. Try it sometime. It's pretty wild.
You know, going back to the album, I loved hearing Love Never Felt So Good on there.
Yeah.
Always loved that track.
Yeah.
And your Michael journey fascinates me. I remember when This Is It came out, the fact that these songs were written in the early 80s and became hits after the man passed.
Yeah.
What does that say about the power of a good song,
Yeah.
about two talented people coming together?
Yeah. Yeah. It says a lot.
Yeah.
It says a lot, but it also says, as you pointed earlier, even a song that was born for years and it's been redone has a power. But you've got something unusual in that Michael Jackson, setting aside all the nonsense, okay? I liked the man, the boy. I knew him as a kid. I respected his talent. But when I worked with him, unlike others that I worked with, where let's say he wasn't musically adept in keyboard stuff, I introduced different chords aspect, but the one-on-one aspect that made three with he and I. But to work with somebody like that, with the backstory of where those songs were never going to come to light, because Michael took the tapes, he did a naughty, and I try to be empathetic about it because I understand he was just so engrossed in career and him and image. I mean, I lived with this guy. I mean, he was at my home, you know. So the tapes being taken, but the basic form of the songs were there. I couldn't do anything, the legality aspects. And then all of a sudden, with this unfortunate death, lawyers or just business people go in and listen to these songs, not knowing. It was, you talk about the revenge factor that I mentioned earlier. And not that I want to use it in this case, but there is an iota. It was amazing because it only started with This Is It when they found out, and then Harvey over at TMZ 11, you know, he's the one that turned me on to it. He said, "We heard this." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean This Is It?" "No, I haven't never." Until I heard it, I said, "I know what they did. They took the starting lyric, this, and we know that This Is It." And then it comes out. And then all of a sudden I hear from one of his music camp, you know, "Thank you, and we've got so many wonderful songs here, and we appreciate it." And they, "Oh, you should hear this one we love." And they play me Love Never Felt So Good. I said, "Well, I wrote that too." He says, "What?" So it went from there to there to there till I'm in a room with Drake, okay? How do you put me in a room with Drake? Anyway, so it was a great moment artistically, a great revenge factor again that lived inside of me because no one had ever stolen my tapes. And I still say that with great empathy for Michael. You know, I mean, he had his right to protect his career, and you know, at that time when I worked with him, for that album just busted wide open, and he was into the mode of protecting himself. So I don't hold that against him, and we rectified later. You know, I was with him and we talked. But to say that I've had the last 3 Michael Jackson hits is saying something.
You know, Drake wants to do this song.
He calls me up.
Okay.
Drake calls me up. He knows about This Is It, Love Never Felt So Good. And it's out there that the story that I've recorded, Michael, I've got the basis of those tracks, and we made our deal. Everybody's happy. And there's this other one called Don't Matter to Me. And he said, "I'd like to come over and hear it." Well, I'm aware of Drake, you know, I respect what he does. It's different than what I do, but Canadian guy and handling himself well, and he's very successful. He's Drake, okay. He'll be somebody else in 10 years. So we sit down. He says, "Wow." He gets into it. I said, "Well, let's sit at the piano." He says, "Well, I don't play piano. I don't do anything." So what do you do? He said, "I work off the computer with my guys." I said, "Well, I've never done that." So I'll tell you what, take what I got. If you can break the code and you send it to me, if I like it, we move forward. If I don't, allow me to say no.
Yeah.
Takes it. Fade out, fade in. He sends me what you hear. It's well produced. For the dynamics that are in there and the approach and the vibe, I loved it. I says, you're on. And it went from there.
I liked it too. But, you know, I'm sure you have so many people wanting to sample this or use this or this,
Yeah.
no matter what it would be. What does it take for someone to come to you and for you to be like, oh, okay, this person is, for lack of a better word, worthy of sampling or using or referencing, or what does it take?
Well, it takes, like anything in life that you do. You look at something, you meet someone, your gut, your sense tells you this is good, this is real, this person's capable. And when you make that choice, predicated on the value that you put on where it comes from, you go with it, knowing that it may not work, or you realize that if it does work, it may not be successful, or it may be. But if you just surround yourself, or you're involved with people that have got great integrity, good talent, and the wherewithal to do it, what more do you want to ask in life? It's what it is. It's what it is, you know. It's just like, even though I tried to talk Elvis out of doing My Way, you know, he'd come and see my shows, we'd sit together, great artist. I said, well, gee, Elvis, not quite your kind of song, you know. And he, no, Paul, it means so much to me. And I could see that what he was going through in his life, the transformation from this to what unfortunately we saw, that it really did mean something to this guy. And, you know, to have Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley do one of your songs, two of the great, whatever you want to call them, hell yeah.
What itch do you have that still needs to be scratched?
Wow. You know, you get to the juncture at the age that I am, but, you know, I'm medically assessed by them that I'm 50. Well, you know, this is the whole thing today. They look at you. You know, there's not much or anything left other than trying to live my life gracefully and to try to live a life with no toxic, with no stress, and with people around me that I don't want to be around that are just, they don't enhance my life. They're negative. There is no itch left. You know, it's to really continue as healthy as I can, to live as long as I can, to enjoy at this final passage what I've got and what I've been given. You know, okay, in the doc I say I haven't put the flag in the mountain. That's professionally. So in that sense, I got to finish this Broadway show. We got a great writer, Rupert Holmes. That I want to finish and that I want to see. But I want to continue just getting on that stage and doing my songs and making people happy.